Hello everyone, I'm Brian Croy Dragon, and welcome to Vox Adventures. Let's see if there's a dungeon in progress. You're fine, Alex. You're fine. What? How? I wasn't even swimming. What? The film for this is quite good. It follows the man who was freed instead of Jesus. Following his liberation to his death. It's based off of a Swedish novel, I believe, which I haven't read, but I'm looking for a copy. Anthony Quinn plays the title character. It's good. Accurately portrays gladiator training. Yeah, for the most part. I'm not sure about that swimming thing, or that running thing. But them learning through choreographed tests is accurate. Now, there's a bit of a big error in that film. Historical, of course. Because it starts off during the reign of Tiberius, which is when Jesus was crucified. Tiberius had his good qualities and his bad qualities. For instance, Rome was at peace during his reign. With only one battle being at the near the start, not immediately the same year, but 2 years in. Now, in the movie, there's a 20-year time skip, which naturally would mean, due to the year Jesus was crucified, that it should be in the reign of Claudius. But, no, it's not Claudius, who we see as emperor. Rather, it is Nero, his great-nephew, stepson, adoptive son, and son-in-law. Yes, that is exactly Nero's relation to Claudius. Actually, when was Jesus crucified? The climax of the film is the Great Fire of Rome, and if memory serves correctly, that happened in 64. Hold on. If Google answers where instead of when Jesus was crucified. Hi. 30 or 33 AD. Either way during Claudius's reign. That's what? How do you make that mistake? That's not 20 years. If it's 30, then oh my god. If it's if the crucifixion is at 30, then it would be 34 years. If it was in 33, it would be 31. That's not 20 years. Alright. Goodbye. Hold on one moment. Alright, let's continue on our way. Now, if you want to know another problem with the movie Barabbas, I'm not exactly sure if that problem with the mathematics is on the book or on the part of the screenwriters. But Nero actually does appear in the film. And he was played by a man who was in his 60s. And you're probably wondering what the problem is there. It would be less, and it's really a big problem. Considering Nero was born in 37, and thus would be 27 years old when the Great Fire happened. And the fact that he only lived to be 30. Hi. You coming up, Alex? Come on. Hi. What's up? Hey. Yes, I love you too. Come on up. Oh. Yeah. It's just thunder, not Latin. Just thundering thunder, not Latining Latin. Oh, jeez. A good kitten. It baffles me how you can, make such a mathematic mistake by portraying the Great Fire of Rome in 64 as having happened 20 years after the crucifixion of Jesus, which, according to scholars, was either 30 or 33, was either in 30 or 33, or how you could cast a man in his 60s as a man in his 20s. It makes no sense. Is the event on now? Guess not. Now, I haven't read the original novel, Barabbas, so I don't know if it actually was 20 years and then he spent over a decade as something in Rome after his stint as a gladiator. I don't know, maybe on the film's part it's just very much compressing it. Nero wasn't the worst of the Julio-Claudians, of the Julio-Claudian emperors. That honor would go to Caligula, with Nero being the second worst. Just as the best would be Augustus, with the second best being Claudius, and then you have Tiberius, who was whatever the middle ground between best and worst is called. I don't know, average? Because the first thing Nero did after the fire was build himself a palace, so maybe he had the fire ordered. You have to remember he was out of Rome at that time, giving him so maybe he had a pretty good alibi and had his men start the fire on a very specific day. Maybe he didn't even do it. Maybe it was just him seeing a good opportunity to get his palace built. What? You're fine, Alex. Well, at least I've got shelter. And that concludes my reading for today. On the histories now. Started King John on Saturday, and today I started Richard II. I don't know, some kind of fish fight. Barabbas isn't the only Bible-related movie that has such a historical mistake. Many a film either about Joseph or the Exodus, which mind you was well after Joseph's time, refers to the ruler of Egypt as Pharaoh, which mind you isn't something that the first contemporary use of that wasn't until 1200 BCE. The Exodus adaptations of the Exodus either have the Pharaoh be Ramses, his son Merneptah, or whatever Amenmesi was. I say that because we're not sure if he was the son of Ramses or the son of Merneptah. Now, yes, Merneptah was the first person to be called Pharaoh, but by the time it was used to refer to him, he had been dead 3 years. So that's a bit of a problem there. Now, Amenmesi died in 1200, so I don't know, maybe he gets a pass? Maybe. Yeah, just maybe. Oh, and should we forget the Ten Commandments, which has the honor of referring to the Battle of Kadesh as having happened during Seti's reign, with Seti as the commander of the Egyptians, instead of during Ramses' reign, with Ramses having been the commander of the Egyptians. The Seti of that movie, around the same could be said for the Ramses of that movie, or Seti and Ramses in the theory. I mean, with the Battle of Kadesh thing, it kind of makes Seti a combination of Ramses. So I guess in that way it kind of makes sense for an older man to have played a Seti, because historically he only lived to be 44, while Ramses lived to be around 90. And Cedric Hardwick was 63, so there's that to remember. Although then having been, I don't even know if Ramses was combined with Merneptah. I mean, other than the Battle of Kadesh being transferred to his father Seti, I don't see much Merneptah thing, anything very Merneptah-ish with Ramses. There's never any mention of him defending Egypt against the Sea People. So maybe it was just an error. It was probably just an error. Granted, that's a pharaoh thing. Calling a man, calling a leader pharaoh before the word was first used contemporarily is not restricted to Bible movies. You see it everywhere. It's not even restricted to movies. TV, comic books, literature, it's everywhere. Yeah, that mistake. Why? Well, I'm guessing one, they didn't do the research, and two, Lord of the Double Kingdom would be too long. If just calling them by their name would not seem impressive, I don't know. Now that I think about it, a majority of stories set during ancient Egypt are they seem to be during the New Kingdom period. What? Why? I don't know. Only one that I can't say is set during the New Kingdom period would be Tales of Ancient Egypt by Roger Lancillon Green, and that's because it covers a wide range. It's not set entirely during the New Kingdom. The last story in that book, Tale of the Rose-Red Slippers, I believe it's called. I did a reading of that. Was set before the first Persian conquest. I say first because there were two Persian dynasties. Of course, sure, I just call them Persian dynasties because technically that's kind of how they were divided into. The whole dynasty thing wasn't exactly used until Philip the Third was until Philip the Third of Macedon had succeeded his younger paternal half-brother Alexander the Great. Now, if you're wondering why the younger brother succeeded the elder, well, it works like this. Uh, Philip III was disabled, both physically and mentally. It was very much a pragmatic decision to step over him. Because it was believed he'd be made a puppet, which is exactly what happened once Alexander died. So for Philip to better understand the history of lands he owned, they were split. The dynasties were created so he'd better understand them. And well, with two Persian periods, it works. Works quite well. Honestly, if it's not the new kingdom of Egypt, it's Ptolemaic Egypt, and that's only because of Cleopatra. Really, it's mainly just Cleopatra. In the film Alexander, we have Ptolemy I as narrator during his days as pharaoh. But other than that, I'm not sure it even counts. Well, shelter down here, so might as well just stick with this spot. Excuse me one moment. You're fine. always are in chronological order, so at least I don't think they are. Really, the only one that's chronological order is. No, wait, they seem to be. Perhaps they are. Wait. No. Wait. Dynasty, Fourth Dynasty. Yes. Go to Lotus, Teflon Magician. Right. Story of Sunray, The Adventures of Sunray. Yeah, what is an agreement? Okay, they aren't even in chronological order. I was right. And there's at least 4 set during the reign of Ramses II. Well, there is 4 exactly. Why am I saying at least 4? Yeah, the girl with the most red snippers, that's the exact title of the last one. Hey, you. Hi. Persian Egypt isn't really something that gets a lot of spotlight in fiction. I mean, yes, Xerxes, one of the Persian kings who did rule Egypt. You know, Xerxes the First, I should specify, gets some spotlight as well when it comes to the Battle of Thermopylae and the following events, but other than that, not really. Doesn't really get that much focus. Cecil B. DeMille once directed a trilogy of films called, I think it's the Bible trilogy, maybe biblical, I'm not exactly sure. The first one, The Ten Commandments, in 1923. Prologue set during the Exodus, the rest of it just a modern story. A short scene near the end showing Jesus healing the lepers. Maybe it qualifies as biblical because both times with the Exodus prologue it's revealed that it's being read from the Bible, as is the case with the Jesus one, so maybe it counts, I'm not sure. Second film, The King of Kings, I think it was called, of course about Jesus, so probably that most definitely counts, and the third, I think it was called The Sign of the Cross, and I think it was about Nero. Well, Nero was featured in it at any rate, so I'm going on a limb here and saying it probably is more about the Great Fire of Rome and the persecution of the Christians afterwards, so I'm not sure if that counts. I don't even think it counts. Okay, what exactly is this trilogy exactly called? The Biblical Trilogy. Oh, jeez. That's your Ten Commandments. The film is divided into two parts: a prologue recreating the biblical story of the Exodus, and a modern story concerning two brothers and their respective views of the Ten Commandments. And then, of course, as I said, there's that bit from the New Testament of Jesus healing a leper. The leper, how did I put it? It was only just one leper, so I should probably just say a leper. Uh, Second movie in the trilogy, The King of Kings, it depicts the last weeks of Jesus before his crucifixion. So, obviously biblical. And then we have The Sign of the Cross, the only sound film in the... What's it even based on? What's it even about? Based on an 1895 play. What was it about? Uh, Christian theme and was an attempt to bridge the gap between church and stage. Okay. The plot resembles the Nebulon Crew Vadis. Much as in Crew Vadis, Marcus Superbus, a woman patrician under Nero, falls in love with a young woman and converts to Christianity for her. As in Crew Vadis, Poppaea, Nero's wife, is in unrequited lust for Marcus. At the end, Marcia and Marcus sacrifice their lives in the arena to the lions. The ending is in complete contrast to Quo Vadis, in which Marcus Vinicius and Ligeia survive and presumably live happily ever after, and Nero and Poppaea are the ones who die. So, not biblical. Okay. Yeah. Don't forget it. Later. Doesn't even count as biblical. The sign of the cross. Can you think of another trilogy of films, thematic or otherwise, where it has a where one of the films does not fit the movie, thematic or otherwise? The sign of the cross is obviously not biblical. The Valiant Knight trilogy of films, another thematic, yeah, trilogy. It all works. No film is it really stands out because Ivanhoe, Knights of the Round Table, Quentin Durward, they all work because the protagonist of each is a valiant knight. Ivanhoe, Lancelot, and Quentin Durward, respectively, all played by Robert Taylor. Granted, Lancelot does have his flaws, but even then. Oh god, and then there's that Baz Luhrmann one, what's it called? The Red Curtain trilogy or whatever. Composed of Moulin Rouge, Romeo and Juliet, and whatever that other one is called. Actually, has there ever been a movie just about the Great Fire of Rome? Has there ever been a story just about that? I know Pompeii is a pretty, uh, the eruption of Vesuvius is a pretty popular thing, but what about the Great Fire of Rome? Actually, a Quo Vadis, or however it's pronounced, Nero and Poppaea Sabina did not die in the same year. I don't know what happened to Poppaea. Was she? I believe she might have been divorced because she was Nero's second out of three wives. I think maybe. No, Claudius had four wives. He Claudius was the one who was married four times. Nero, I think, was well technically five, but one of those two of those unfortunate spouses. Well, one of them was a castrated youth, so who supposedly resembled Popea. So actually, I think she might have just died. Might not. Nero might not have divorced her. Now, the jumping I get, but the swimming, I had not been swimming. You... Okay, is there a back door? Is there a back door? No back door. No back door, no back door. Left up. Is there a back door? Is there a back door? Yes. Actually, technically, two of Nero's spouses were men. Obviously, there's the castrated youth Zhorvix, and then there's Pythagoras, and I'm not exactly sure what the story is with him. What I do know is that Nero took the role of the bride in that marriage ceremony, and okay, let's take a look here. Nero. Nero died 68 AD. Poppaea Sabina died 65 AD. Okay, so Poppaea was not divorced. He did divorced his first wife, Claudia Octavia, who was also his aunt, adoptive sister, and stepsister. Yeah. Okay, so Tinia Mussolini, what was the story with her? And the third wife of Nero, I should say. So you... What? I'm not walking. How did I increase my skill? I'm not walking right now. What? Jeez. Okay, she completely survived. Nero, so... Okay, Sporus was a young boy whom the Roman Emperor Nero supposedly favored, had castrated, and married. And he said to have had a remarkable resemblance to Pompeius, so, yeah, okay. So that was exactly the story with Pythagoras. Pythagoras, a freed man of the Roman Emperor Nero, who was married in a public ceremony in which the emperor took the role of bride. Okay. Not enough information about him, so really have no idea what was going on. We at least got a reason for Sporus, but I don't know what the reason was for Nero. And marrying Pythagoras. Then again, supposedly he, what's the word? If I was to wanted to be both man and woman. I don't know what the thing was with him. It said it apparently he even wanted to know what it was like to give birth to a child. So in an apocryphal story, they made him swallow a frog fetus or something. I don't know what the story is with Nero. He's might be a bit on the odd side, but then again, there's a lot of apocrypha with some of these early rulers. Okay, Quo Vadis. The novel Quo Vadis tells of a love that develops between a young Christian woman, Lycia, and Marcus Vinicius, a Roman patrician. It takes place in the city of Rome under the rule of Emperor Nero 64 AD, circa 64 AD. That. Okay, so it portrays Nero dying 4 years before he actually did, and Poppaea dying 3 years before she did. Wait. Wait a minute, hold on. The rest of the novel relates to the historical events of Peter's martyrdom. Petronius is resigned death in the aftermath of Piso's conspiracy and concludes with a vision of retribution in the death of Nero based on Suetonius. So, do they... I don't think they actually die in the story. I think it's something that's just mentioned. If I remember, if I'm reading this right, it's more like a footnote or something. Excuse me. Is the Great Fire of Rome even in this? I mean, circa 64, it's gotta be. Okay, historical events. Yeah, Great Fire of Rome, which in the novel is started by orders of Nero. There's no hard evidence to support this, and fires were very common in Rome at the time. In chapter 50, senior Jewish community leaders advised Nero to blame the fire on Christians. There is no historical record of this either. The fire opens in the city for Nero's Palatium complex, a massive villa with lush artificial landscapes and a 30-meter tall sculpture of the emperor, as well as an ambitious urban planning program involving the creation of buildings decorated with ornate porticos and the widening of the streets. A redesign which is not implemented until after Nero's death. Okay, let's see here. Cian Kiris alludes to several historical events and merges them in his novel, but some of them are of doubtful authenticity. So wait, does the Great Fire of Rome even appear in this? You know, it would be good if Wikipedia actually included a section in the article about portrayals of the event. Just saying. Well, in Son of the Cross, Charles Lawton played Nero at the age of 30. Well, Charles Lawton was 33. So it's not really as bad as whatever his name was, who was in his 60s, who was cast as Nero in Barabbas. Mm. How do you... I do believe in ability over appearance, but that actor was well out of the age range. Hey, and before anyone gets on me about not being able to do math, Nero had not turned 31 yet in 68, so yeah, he was 30. No, I'd probably look for the King of Kings and the Son of the Cross. Actually, the Son of the Cross stands out in the biblical, in Susan B. DeMille's biblical trilogy for two reasons. It's the only sound film in the trilogy, and it's technically not biblical. It's not as bad as Laurence Olivier's Shakespeare trilogy, another thematic trilogy. The order of the trilogy is Henry V from 1944, Hamlet from 1948, and Richard III from 1955. I mean, they're all Shakespeare plays, but Henry V and Richard III are both in color, and they're histories. Hamlet is in black and white, and it's a tragedy. And for added strangeness, Richard III is set well after Henry V. Well, then we're going into English history there. Because if you know your Shakespeare, you know Richard III begins with, well, what should be called the second reign of Edward IV. Because he was King of England twice, just like Henry VI was. And then after Edward IV dies, his son Edward V becomes king, and after his disappearance, Richard became king. So really, it's kind of strange that Olivier went with Hamlet, and he could have adapted. He could have combined Henry VI's Parts 1, 2, and 3 into one play if he felt like it. Into one movie, I should say. But Henry V is an odd movie in itself. Because with Richard III, it's just and with Richard III and Hamlet, they're straightforward adaptations. They don't start at the Globe Theatre with a recreation of the first performance. But it's starting with Laurence Olivier playing an actor, playing Henry V, and so on and so forth, with it gradually becoming more immersive, I guess I should say. With it ultimately becoming Laurence Olivier playing Henry. Yeah, that's really only one of Laurence Olivier's Shakespeare trilogy to do that. Why? I don't know. So even then, if Laurence Olivier did choose to adapt Henry VI instead of Hamlet, it would have been strange. Because Henry V might have been the only, it's the only one of the trilogy, of that thematic trilogy to actually start it off at the Globe Theatre. But in all honesty, it's got a better right to be called the Shakespeare trilogy than the Biblical trilogy does to be called the Biblical trilogy. Because obviously, they're all adaptations of Shakespeare plays. In contrast to the Sign of the Cross, which isn't even biblical. Jeez, it's really turned into a discussion on what has a better right to be considered a thematic trilogy, hasn't it? And I guess that's all right. Biblical trilogy. The sign of the cross isn't biblical. Yeah. If you know any more thematic trilogies like that, let me know. I'd like that. Any more thematic trilogies like that where one obviously doesn't match the others, I'd like that. Okay, so back to Quo Vadis and the Great Fire of Rome. I'm looking at a poster for the 1951 film adaptation, and it looks like the Great Fire might be in it. I mean, it very much looks like the fire might be in the book, period, but I'm not exactly sure with the wording if it's skipped over or not. I mean, Wikipedia's article, it says the author alludes to several historical events and merges them in his novel. Why? What? Yeah, it says alludes to mer- and merges them. So, does the Great Fire not actually happen? Oh, jeez, this is getting confusing. Let's see here. 1913 film adaptation. Film poster is Nero playing his lyre while the fire burns Rome. I'm thinking it does appear. Okay, let's see. But okay, basic plot of the 1913 film. The story is set during the latter years of the reign of the Emperor Nero. Marcus Vinicius, one of Nero's military officers, falls in love with a young Christian hostage named Lycia. But their love is hindered by Nero, who has his soldiers burn Rome and pins the blame on the Christians. Yeah, it's actually in it. It's not just a stunt to get. It wasn't just a stunt to get people to see it. Okay, 1924 film. In Rome during the reign of Nero, a young pagan general named Marcus Vinicius falls in love with a beautiful Christian hostage named Lycia. Their love appears to be impossible because of the conflict of their religions. Nero burns the city and blames the Christians, already hated by the pagan Romans. Okay, so again, appears. I'm getting a pretty good feeling that it's not just alluded to in the novel. Okay, 1951 film poster I've mentioned. Okay, quick run through of the plot. Da, 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 da. Oh, the Apostle Peter is played by Finlay Curry. Blah, blah, blah. Da, 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 da. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wait, oh god. Screw it, I'm just gonna read these paragraphs. The story is set in ancient Rome during the final years of Emperor Nero's reign, 64 to 68 AD. Combines both historical and fictional events and characters, and compresses the key events of that period into the space of only a few weeks. Its main theme is the Roman Empire's conflict with Christianity and persecution of Christians in the final years of the Julio-Claudian line. Unlike his illustrious and powerful predecessor, Emperor Claudius, Nero proved corrupt and destructive, and his actions eventually threatened to destroy Rome's previously peaceful social order. Not sure if that could have been included in the plot section, but okay. Vorkis Vinicius is a Roman military commander and the legate of the XIV Gemina. Returning from wars in Britain and Gaul, he falls in love with Ligeia, a devout Christian, and as a result, he finds himself increasingly drawn to her religion. Though she grew up as the foster daughter of Aulus Plautius, a retired Roman general, Ligeia is legally a hostage of Rome. Petronius, Marcus's uncle, persuades Nero to give her to his nephew as a reward for his services. Ligeia resents this arrangement, but cannot resist falling in love with Marcus. Meanwhile, Nero's atrocities become increasingly outrageous and his behavior more irrational. After Nero burns Rome, okay, so sounds like the fire's in there. I'm really getting a feeling that it's in the book. Oh, jeez. 1985 miniseries. The series lasts 6 episodes and it was originally shown in 6 1-hour episodes. No plot, no episode synopsis. Yeah. Quo Vadis 2001 adaptation. A Polish film. Let's see here. The central plot in the movie around the love of a the central plot in the movie revolves around the love of a Roman patrician, Marcus Vicinius, towards a Christian girl, set against the backdrop of the persecutions against Christians during the reign of Nero. In the beginning, Ligeia, a Christian and hostage of Rome, becomes the object of Vinicius's love, but she refuses his advances. Vinicius's friend Petronius tries to manipulate Nero, who has authority over all Roman hostages, to give Ligeia to Vinicius, but Ligeia is taken into hiding by Christians. Marcus Vinicius decides to find her and force her to be his wife. He goes to a Christian meeting along with Croton, a gladiator, to fight her, After following her from the meeting, Marcus tries to take her, but Ursus, a strong man in front of Lygia, kills Croton. Marcus himself is wounded in the fight, but is taken care of by Lygia and the Christians. Seeing their kindness, he begins to convert to Christianity, and Lygia accepts him. Roman catches fire while the Emperor Nero is away. Okay, so pretty good feeling the Great Fire is in the novel. Granted, I could just read the synopsis of the plot for the novel, but um, the synopsis is pretty long. Does the Fire of Rome even appear in Sign of the Cross? Can't even tell what's going on in that. What's supposed to be happening in the poster. It's just got uh, the protagonist and then a bunch of people. Both play and film have a strong resemblance to the novel Quo Vadis, and like the novel takes place in ancient Rome during the reign of Nero. Okay. That's your production. The famous scene in which Poppaea bathes and ass's milk took several days to shoot. The Mail announced in the press that real ass's milk was used, however, it was actually powdered cow's milk. After a few days under the hot lights, the milk turned sour, making it very unpleasant for Claudette Colbert to work in the stench. To save production expense during the Great Depression, existing sets were reused as well as costumes left over from the making of the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments I can see with the costumes. Costumes from the Hebrews, obviously. I'm doubting costumes from the Egyptians were reused. But the sets I severely doubt, since a good... Obviously the sets set in Egypt weren't used, and that's here. The Mail also attempted to provide out-of-work actors jobs as extras such as the crowd arena scenes. Reception. In 2008, the film was nominated for the American Film Institute's 10 Top 10 in the Epic Film category. Okay, that's it. That's all it has for reception. Hmm. Editing for reissue after enforcement of the production code. As with many other pre-code films that were reissued after the motion picture production code was strictly enforced in 1934, this film has a history of censorship. In the original version, Marcus Superbus is unsuccessful in his desire to seduce Mercia, an innocent Christian girl. He then urges Ancoria to perform the erotic dance of the naked moon that will warm her into life. This lesbian dance was cut from the negative for a 1938 reissue, but was restored by MCA Universal for its 1993 video release. Some gladiatorial combat footage was also cut for the 1938 reissue, as were arena sequences involving naked women being attacked by crocodiles and a gorilla. These were also restored in 1993. The film himself supervised a new version for its 1944 re-release, new footage for the World War II setting featuring actor Stanley Regis, who did not originally appear in the film, was added to make the film more topical. In the new prologue, a group of planes is seen flying over what was ancient Rome. The conversation of the soldiers in one of the planes leads directly into the film's original opening scene. The last few seconds of the edited version of the film showed the planes flying off into the distance rather than simply fading out on the original closing scene of the movie. For many years, this edited version was the only one available. The version now shown on Turner Classic Movies has been restored to the original 125-minute length by the UCLA Film and Television Archive with the help of the DeMille Estate and Universal Television, which now owns most pre-1950 Paramount sound features. So let's put a maybe on the Great Fire of Rome appearing in that film. Wrong. There we go. What? Yeah, 75%. I say we could beat them. Maybe. Yeah, 50%. We're definitely gonna beat them. Maybe not. Where are the healers? Oh, right. It's not much, but it's something. match made in the underworld. Well, it's something. I'm just curious with how much of this recording was just me going on about the Great Fire of Rome. Jeez, what even is my accent? It sounds like it's going all over the place today. Oh, jeez. Please, stop with the leg. Oh my god, where am I? Wait. This is glowstone. Looks like it's raining. Huh? Where's the egg? It has not started yet. Who did that? Swine and lobster. Take your stinking claws off me, you damn dirty lobster. No, wait, what was this? That's not what I said. Swine and lobster. Take your stinking claws off me, you naughty lobster. Yeah, that's how it went. Of course, it's gonna be probably a non sequitur for those own personal hell in Minecraft. Lava outside of the nether and not underground. Only thing that could make this worse would be husks. From Mountain Domania would probably be spiders. Of course, husks and lava are pretty bad for me. What? Hi? You're fine. Look at this place. All that's missing is husks. Husks coming after me. Well, that's all for today, everyone. I'm Brian Croy Dragon signing out. Stay straight.